welcome into the Michigan Football Report. We are presented by Manscaped. If you need any help down below, want to clean things up, to hopefully spice things up in the bedroom, make sure you're using Manscaped. Use promo code GOBLUE at checkout. 20% off, big time, and free shipping. It's manscaped.com. Promo code GOBLUE. They are the presenting sponsor of the Michigan Football Report. University of Michigan has announced new staff members on the recruiting department, and frankly, I think these are some welcome changes to the Matt Dudak kind of one-man operation with a rotating list of coordinators and assistants over the years. It looks like Jim Harbaugh is putting in some structure that will allow the program to compete with expanding the recruiting base with high school coaches, the recruiting portal, have a boss that has directors reporting to him. So I want to walk through the staff really quick, starting on the left side of your screen with Courtney Morgan. He is the new director of player personnel. I'm going to call him the new GM of the Michigan football program. He is making the decisions from roster management to the transfer portal to high school recruits and offers and everything like that. He's going to kind of own every recruiting class as well as the transfer portal. So a big job for him. He's coming over from the West Coast, former Michigan player. Then you got Christina DeRuyter. Her dad, the former head football coach at Fresno State, now is the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at Oregon. She's going to be in charge of on-campus recruiting. Younger gal. I don't know her exact age, 25, 26. Aashon Larkins. Last year, he moved over from a recruiting analyst role to fill in on the staff after Bob Shoop was not allowed to coach last year due to some off-the-field discretions. He goes from interim safeties coach last year to new director of recruiting, taking over the exact job title that Matt Dudak had, although Dudak kind of tried to fill all three of those roles between Morgan, DeRuyter, and Larkins. Then you've got Jerret McElwain. Jim McElwain's son came over with his dad about 3 years ago, has stayed out of Michigan. He's now been there for over 3 years. He is now your director of scouting. That's both going to be from the high school perspective and in the transfer portal. And then Tony Jones, been with Michigan for a few years. Since July 2017, he's been with Michigan in 3 different roles. He was football operations assistant, recruiting operations coordinator. Now he's your director of high school relations. He will be the guy to make sure you're talking to high school football coaches all the time. So you saw the staff changes. This is your new recruiting department, your new leadership, all director level. So they're making the big bucks, etc. Fairly young, right? Courtney Morgan, the oldest one of them, in his late-ish 30s. The rest of them in their early 30s or down to Christina DeRuyter in her mid-20s. So grade these staff changes A, B, C, D, or F. I'm going to go ahead and give it a B+. Reason why, I've heard a lot of good things about all these people from their prior roles, but that's always the case when someone makes a new hire, right? I do think having some structure and adding positions to be aggressive to fill in the gaps where Michigan has probably lacked under Jim Harbaugh over the past few years, and then accounting for the potential for the transfer portal being a 20 and 30 player turnover machine where you've got all kinds of guys leaving and coming in who are sophomore, junior, senior level eligibility every year. I'm going to go ahead and give it a B+, but go down and comment. Let us know. Let's go a little deeper on a few of these. So on-campus recruiting director. It is where I think Matt Dudak, who's now in that same kind of all-encompassing role at Mississippi State, he was always known as a guy who did very well once you got on campus. I think where people didn't like him, myself included, Matt Dudak, is he didn't seem to identify a ton of talent. He didn't also seem to be overly communicative. I've talked to plenty of parents of recruits who said, hey, we tried to get a hold of Michigan, and they wouldn't even return our calls. Dudak is really slow on email, all this stuff. Once they got on campus for a visit, an official visit, or an unofficial visit, Dudak, served very well. Parents, recruits, everyone raved about him. It was the organization and building an operation where he struggled. So Christina DeRuyter, she will be coming over from Vanderbilt, was only there for a little more than a year. She was at Texas Tech prior to that in this director of on-campus recruiting. Kind of just think about it like this. Somebody gets to campus on a Friday for an official visit. Michigan is paying for their flight, their transportation to the airport, their flight, their landing, their transportation to campus, making sure they're paired with the right student athlete that's going to show them around, making sure they have all their credentials. They have a great time. They leave. They see everything you need to see. I think that's a big part of the deal. You wow somebody on campus, you wow their parents, you get those in-campus commitments. So it's a much-needed position to just hyper-focus on making that experience one of a kind, A+. You walk into the football museum that is Schembechler Hall. You go over to the biggest football stadium in the United States. You talk to legends and Heisman Trophy winners, and you hopefully see a Michigan football win. That is going to be her job. You see the experience she's had in the SEC, in the Big 12, in the Pac-12, and as an intern with the National Football League Players Association. But only been out of college for 4 years now, so she is young, but hopefully that experience will serve her right. And I'm going to say this, folks. It's an arms race out there. Alabama has completely changed the game about 8, 9, 10 years ago. They changed the game wholeheartedly with all of these analysts. Nick Saban built their recruiting department once again in his 3rd and 4th year like an NFL front office, right? No, every person is responsible for being the absolute best in the country at this one particular area. And with Alabama seeming to be the best team in the country, now all of a sudden the recruiting portal, they just got an All-American level linebacker to come over in conference from their rival Tennessee. Michigan cannot continue to lose out on these players, cannot continue to fall behind when it comes to the recruiting high school kids, transfer portal, and think about this for a quick second. When name, image, and likeness becomes a thing across college campuses where players can consider, hey, can I make $100,000, $50,000, $200,000 if I go to a certain school? These things are going to become even more important. So it's an arms race. I think Michigan should continue to develop this recruiting department. Every one of these people should have 2 assistants under them. And I think if you want to compete with Ohio State, who's almost where Alabama is in recruiting, I think you're going to have to execute them and have the best staffs in the country. But before we jump into a little more on these new recruiting coordinators positions, and we're going to talk about the big June recruiting weekend, I want to see what you guys think. Shout out your best favorite Michigan football player of all time in the comments below. I put it on the YouTube community earlier today, also put it on our Facebook page, but I said other than Charles Woodson. So if you want to say Charles Woodson, go ahead, but go ahead and comment your favorite football player. I'm going to go Woodson number 1 for me, Braylon Edwards probably number 2, maybe Mike Hart number 3, but I want to know from you guys. Type it down in the comments below. All right, let's keep rolling. Aashon Larkins. This is not a name that is woefully unfamiliar with a lot of people because he was on the field last year. First time he was an on-the-field coach, and he probably was angling for that job at the end of the season. Michigan really shuffled up their coaching staff, and he's still on the recruiting side. But he has now been elevated. New role for him, Larkins. He was the interim safeties coach last year, and now he is your director of recruiting. So he is identifying, think about it in an NFL perspective, he is the guy who is kind of putting together your big board at cornerback, at safety, at quarterback, at running back, at every position, trying to make sure Michigan is targeting, identifying, communicating with all the best prospects, pushing for commitments, and everything that goes into that. So Dudek was trying to do this role and the on-campus role and the scholarship role, and so I'm glad to see that Michigan has now 3 different people in those roles. But his work history, last year he was interim safeties coach. Prior to that, at a few different schools, some of them, you might have a tough time pronouncing. Good thing I'm an English major back in the day. Bethune-Cookman, he was the director of recruiting for them for about 5 seasons. Prior to that, he was at Jacksonville State. Prior to that, he was at the Citadel in an on-field role, obviously not Power 5, obviously not D1 level. So that's Aashon Larkins for Michigan, and we will talk more about the staff and the June recruiting visit coming up here in just a moment. We are presented by Manscaped, as I mentioned earlier in the show. Get 20% off and free shipping using that promo code GOBLUE. They just launched the Lawnmower 4.0. Normally $90, $89.99. Use our promo code GOBLUE. Get $71.99. This bad boy is amazing. It trims up. You're not going to nick it. You're not going to be bleeding down there. Believe me, that can happen. And you're going to be smooth for when the mood strikes with the lady or guy, whoever you're getting into bed with at night. They're going to appreciate that you're using Manscaping. Or, ladies watching, you want to get one for your man. Father's Day coming up, right? This is the product. Make sure you're not paying full price. Make sure you're getting full shipping. Manscaped.com. Use that promo code GOBLUE. Courtney Morgan, former Michigan offensive lineman from the early 2000s under Lloyd Carr, your new director of player personnel. He is your GM of the program. If Michigan has any issues with roster management, with turnover, with transfers, he's the guy you're going to have to blame in a lot of ways. So, from LA originally, came to Michigan out of high school, was out of football for a while. Like, there was a good stretch in the late part of the the 2000s, and then in the last part of the last decade where he was out of football altogether. Tried some entrepreneurial stuff. He was in some different sales roles. You see, he was at Fresno State most recently. Spent a season there, director of player personnel. San Jose State, across the state of California the year prior, and then he had a 5 or 6 year gap where he had a different job or two. Also tried his hand at some entrepreneurial endeavors, and then prior to that, he was at UCLA in director of player development. So, like the hire, hopefully he does well. And this month of June, right, we've got till a week from Monday, a week from Memorial Day. Michigan has the NCAA's mandated no visits on campus, no official visits. But June is official visit season, and Michigan absolutely needs this front office that they are getting with these new hires. Now, three of these people have been with the program prior. Obviously, Courtney Morgan and Christina DeRuyter are new to Michigan, coming over from Fresno, coming over from Vanderbilt. But Larkins, McElwain, Tony Jones, all kind of getting elevated in their role, getting a promotion to director level. Michigan needs a front office, and this month of June starts a week from Monday. The first official visits in almost 18 months or so is going to be huge, and these folks are going to have to hit the ground running in this role and make sure they are putting Michigan in a position to win now and in the future. All right, are you subbed to the channel? Are you a subscriber to the Michigan Football Report? If you're a Michigan fan, go ahead and type me if you've already subscribed to the channel. We're putting out 4 or 5 videos a week here in the off season. Once the season comes, we try and do a video every single day. So go down and type me if you're subbed. I want to give you guys some love. I'll get down in the comments, give you some thanks, all that good stuff. If you haven't subbed, or if you're an Ohio State fan and you just want more information on Michigan, go ahead and hit the sub button, and then go ahead and type me and be like, me, just subbed, and we'll be all good. All right, so June's coming up. June 4th, you've got a tiny recruiting weekend, right? Not a big one by any means. Just got a couple players. I'm going to go through a couple of these names. Hayden Schwartz out of Jacksonville, a defensive lineman. Then you've got Micah Pollard, a linebacker, also at Jacksonville, coming in for that next one, but that weekend. But the week of June 11th, then you got one player coming in kind of midweek. You've got Nate Johnson, who seems to be Michigan's top target from the quarterback position. We'll kind of talk about these players in more depth in a second. Miles Pollard coming in that weekend. He's only a 3-star out of Tennessee, but very high on Michigan's list from the secondary. So that could be a potential commit from those two players that weekend. Miles Pollard, the defensive back out of Tennessee. Nate Johnson, quarterback out of Northern California. June 18th, you got a ton of people. This June 18th is the summer weekend. Think of it kind of like as the Notre Dame home game weekend, the Ohio State home game weekend. Recruiting is moving way up. You're allowed to have official visits in the summer, and with June being 17 months or so without recruiting visits on campus, this is going to be a huge one. You have, what does it say there, 22 players. I bet by the time that weekend gets around, you have as many as 40 recruits in that weekend, including all 7 of Michigan's current commitments, including Will Johnson, including Cody Jones, all kinds of players that you've heard their names in the past that are currently committed to Michigan. But here's the notable. You got 3 coming in at the end of the month there. You see the bottom of the screen. But here's the notable players I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on. You see 618 for 4 of the 5. Walter Nolan, top 5 player in the country, best defensive lineman in the country, out of the state of Tennessee. If Michigan can, make sure he makes this visit, put full court press. Will Johnson, current commit, also will be there that weekend. You got another 4-star wide receiver. You got a 4-star defensive lineman. Michigan could come out with this weekend with half of their class or more filled. You could add 4, 5, 6 extra commits in this June 18th weekend. And the weekend prior to that, you've got Nate Johnson, the 3-star. He could potentially commit, as I said, Miles Pollard as well. So these are the players I'm looking out for. Johnson's obviously only a 3-star quarterback. I think if Michigan takes the commit from him early, they will still pursue other players in that quarterback role for the 2022 class, but he seems to be the most quarterback paid attention to at this point in the process. Let me know what you guys think. Will Michigan have a top 10 class in the 2022 recruiting cycle? They finished there in 2021 on signing day, on both the early signing day and the late signing day. But when when Xavier Worthy decided to ask out of his letter of intent and Michigan no longer had a top 100 wide receiver, class ended up finishing 14th, all right? So I'm not sure if that's been widely reported. Michigan ended up with the number 14 class in 2021. So type Y for yes, type N for no below in the comments. Let me know if you think this new staff, Jim Harbaugh, maybe a Nazi, if they can pull together a top 10 class. This June 18th class, though, it is absolutely vital. You've got Nolan Johnson. You've got all kinds of other players. I'll walk through a few other ones, just name them out there. You've got Sir Mells, the defensive lineman out of Henderson, Nevada, that a lot of people really like. You got Connor Jones out of Colorado, offensive lineman. We mentioned Darius Clemens. Austin Brown, another defensive back out of the state of Illinois. A lot of talent coming in. Several 5-stars. Several program-changing players if you can get their commitments and get them ultimately to sign in December. So that is 4 weeks away. It's actually 30 days away from now is when we will see whether or not this Michigan staff of 3 promoted youngsters and 2 outsiders coming in bigger roles than they have at their prior schools, whether or not they can put together the game plan for Jim Harbaugh that he's going to need to compete with Ohio State. Obviously not in 2021, but 2022 and beyond. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you continue to watch the Michigan Football Report for all your news, rumors, recruiting, and more. Go Blue.